Book Dragons, it's Alyssa. Welcome back to my channel. We are going to discuss the books that I read in January and February. I didn't read enough to do... Ooh, hello cats. I didn't read enough to do a separate video for each month. I think between the two I read maybe 5, 6 books. I do have one DNF. I have one that I'm currently still reading as of March 1st. So there you go. If you enjoy cat sounds in the background and dog sounds in the background, keep watching this video because I guarantee you that there's going to be plenty of them. So I'm not going to do an order like favorite book of the months or to least favorite or anything like that. I'm just going to do them in the order that I read them. The first one being Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. This book follows, oh god, what is her name? Audrey Rose. Yes, I finally remembered. This book follows Audrey Rose, who is a lord's daughter and is very interested in forensic medicine. So she often is found in her uncle's laboratory practicing on cadavers. This is a little bit more of like a gruesome, macabre story. It follows Jack the Ripper, which took place in the late 1800s, and they're trying to figure out who Jack the Ripper really is. Audrey Rose has to face a lot of expectations from society and her father and the rest of her family as well. I do like that she is very headstrong, she is smart, she knows what she wants, and she's not afraid to go after what she wants. I do have to say that this wasn't my favorite read. This wasn't even one of my top reads. I feel like for me, this book was very forgettable. I like the male lead, Thomas Cresswell. I thought that he was very intriguing. I think I would actually have preferred the book to be from his point of view, or at least parts of the book to be from his point of view, because his mind was so fascinating. I fell in love with him as a character pretty quickly. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue on with this series. I just felt like it was very predictable. I knew fairly quickly within the first 50 pages who the bad guy was or who Jack the Ripper was. It played out in a way that was just, for me, anticlimactic. It just didn't do it for me. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because I can see where people would absolutely love this book and love this series. I'm just not sure if it's the right one for me. I do own the second book, so I might try that and give that a try. I know it's not a long series. I think it's only 4 books and a novella, so I might just keep pursuing it. I'm just not sure. I have so many books on my shelves and so many books that I want to read. I don't know if I want to continue on based on my feelings, my wishy-washy feelings of this book. I do love the characters though, so I just don't know. I think I would have appreciated or been more excited to continue on with this series if the second book followed a different characters, if each book was its own thing. I don't know. I know a lot of people love it. I know a lot of my friends on BookTube love it. So we'll see. I really want to like this one, or this series, I should say. I already read this one. The next book that I read in January, the rating I gave it is not going to be a surprise for you if you've been with my channel for more than 3 videos, and that is The Adventure Zone Petals to the Metal by the McElroy family. This is one of my favorite series of all time. It's my favorite graphic novel series ever. This series is based on a podcast where the McElroy brothers and their father play Dungeons and Dragons in real time. The characters are just so perfect in their terrible attitudes, and I just love the fact that they just don't give a shit. They don't care. It doesn't matter how high the stakes are. They're gonna make jokes. They're gonna be sarcastic. They just don't care. I love them so much. I know that this series is gonna be 7 books, but I want it to be like 25 just because I love it so much. And each book has its own brilliant, funny, ridiculous story, but there's this huge overall plot that it follows. please do yourself a favor and pick up the first book in this series. I don't think I need to say that I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I just love this series so much. The last book I picked up in January was From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Okay, there's a lot about this book. First of all, it follows a main character named Poppy. She's the maiden. Her ascension, whom no one knows what that looks like or what that actually is supposed to save her people. There's these monsters called the Craven that were turned by these other creatures. There's a whole long story. It's a fantasy romance. So she's not even allowed to show her face. She has to stay hidden. She has to stay pure. She isn't even really allowed to read. She faces a lot of emotional and physical and sexual abuse. She also falls in love. There's 2 people in her life that she trusts more than the others. One is like her handmaiden, and then the other one is one of her personal guards, who is more like a father figure. In secret, he teaches her how to fight, so she knows how to use this dagger that can kill cravens and kill anything. And she has to face just a lot of bullshit. This book has made its rounds on BookTube. I don't think I need to go into any more explanations than that. I have to say, it was my first time reading a fantasy romance like this. I've definitely read fantasies with romance in it, but I haven't actually read explicit fantasy romance, if you know what I mean. I enjoyed reading this book. I do think it is what she a thick lady. It's a lot bigger than it needs to be. It should have been about 200 pages less. My initial star rating of this book was a 4 out of 5, but the more I think about it, I feel like it's more like a 3. There's just a lot about it that I just didn't like. I loved I'm gonna put this down, she's heavy. I loved Poppy the first like 2/3 of the book. I really liked her as a character, but then after that I felt like she was too not delusional. She was too ignorant of the clues and everything around her. There's supposed to be this big twist at the end that they draw out for like 200 pages that you figure out within the first 100 pages of the book. So it was just really weird why that was drawn out so much, and why Poppy, who's otherwise been very smart and cunning up to this point, is just dumb, if I can be so bold. So that threw me off. I also have to say the original meeting of her and the love interest pulled me out of the story. That was weird. It was a very weird scene. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. I just kept saying, this wouldn't happen? What? This wouldn't happen. But it's a fantasy romance, so you've got to have those not safe for work scenes. It was good. It's good enough that I'm going to read the second one. I waffle between a 3 and 4 star rating. There you go. From Blood and Ash. Read it if you want. I am not one to shy away from DNFing a book. So when I tried to read Cinderella is Dead by Kailyn Barron, I got halfway through before I was like, I'm done. This book takes place 200 years after Cinderella, and they've turned the Cinderella story into sort of a religion and a way to oppress women and children. Sophia is the main character, and she wants to fight against it. She's also in love with her best friend and doesn't want to have to marry a man. I have to say my biggest issue with this book is I felt like the writing was very amateurish. And it also felt very young for the age group that it was written for. Also, the stakes were very high, but it never felt like it, and it wasn't my cup of tea. I just think the writing was very lacking for me. I could not get into this book. So in this story, people are literally being taken to the castle as forfeit or to be executed for the smallest things, because it's a very tyrannical government, or tyrannical, I should say, king. And she's just speaking freely about her distaste for how things are run in the middle of like the village, like just spouting out her beliefs. And in that kind of an oppressive kingdom, she's not going to be as outspoken. There was no fear that she was actually going to be forfeit, or that she was going to be executed, or anything. Like I said, the stakes were not high. I felt like I was reading a book that was written by a 14 or 15-year-old for like 12 or 13-year-olds. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just was not for me. Sorry about that. My camera died, so it's probably a new angle, new lighting, who the heck knows. So another book that I read in February is Frostheart by Jamie Littler. This book follows Ash, who has been abandoned by his parents. He has no idea what happened to them, and he's kind of raised by his village. His latest guardian is a Yeti. Weasley's deflating. So in the world where Ash lives, there's the Lurkers. They are these monsters that kind of live under the ice surface, and they can sing, but it sounds more like screaming, and they attack because they're monsters. Ash can actually understand them and has this innate feeling that he can sing to them and calm them down. Eventually something happens that sets Ash on a quest and a journey that he didn't expect. This book I've seen everywhere. I know Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin is obsessed and loves this series, and I'm pretty sure that this was one of the books that the first Believe-a-thon had as like a group read. It might have been the second one. So I know a lot of people that have read this and loved it. I gave it 4 stars. I did really enjoy reading it. It's a middle grade read, so there were some things that if this had been written for an older age group that I would have been a little bit more harsh on. The one reason I couldn't give it 5 stars is the bad guy is the bad guy. Like, you kind of have it figured out from the beginning, and it was just a little bit annoying to, and I feel this way about any book that's like this, where you know what's gonna happen and you're watching the main character make the same mistakes or make these decisions that you just want to shake them and say, no, don't do that. So I had that feeling for most of the book, and the twist in the story wasn't really a twist for me. I definitely love this book though. I want to read the second one. I recommend it. Pick it up. It is a quick read. It is not as light of a read as you would expect, because it does have some heavy topics, including the feeling of being alone, of feeling different, of feeling unloved. Like, it definitely reached my soul in a way I wasn't expecting, and it was very heartwarming. I loved the book, so I definitely recommend picking it up. It was really, really good. I also read Kingdom of Souls by Raina Barron in February. This I saw on a lot of people's favorites of 2020 list, so I picked it up. I already had it on my shelves, but I decided to read it, I should say. This book follows Ara, and she comes from a long line of witch doctors, like powerful witch doctors, and she doesn't have magic. So her whole life, she's tried every year. There's this big ceremony to see if she'll get magic or if you get magic in general, and she never gets it. Her grandmother is even a chieftain of their tribe, and she just very powerful. Her mother was supposed to be the chieftain of her tribe, and her tribe is the most powerful of all the tribes, but she walked away from it. And then her father is a very, very powerful with magic. She can see magic, she can feel magic, but she just can't call to magic or it won't answer her. And also people can't like touch her mind, so she has that gift. So her grandmother every year does tests to see like maybe this will be the year, and this year is technically the last year that anyone ever gets no one gets magic past 16, and she's 16 at the beginning of this book. The night of the ceremony, or the next night, one of the two, the ceremony lasts like a month. So the first or second night of the ceremony, her grandmother is doing the tests when this dark force comes in, this dark magic, and they think it's demon magic, which was demons were exiled or killed off. They haven't existed for thousands of years. Just kidding. Whoops. So this book is definitely not what I was expecting. I was expecting it to be about a girl who comes from a powerful line of witch doctors, who has heard of charlatans that sell years of their life away for magic, and would never do that until some children in their kingdom go missing, and then she might make that decision. So that sounded very interesting to me. I have to say the first 50 pages of this book I was really into. It had a lot of potential. Then it just kept doing this as I kept reading it. You find out who the bad guy is, like the villain, 100 pages into the book. And that doesn't change. Like, there's not a twist. That doesn't change. Also, there's a huge chunk of this book where something happens that makes the character, the main character, be a passive character and just sort of reacting to everything that's happening around them, and they're not allowed to really do anything about it. So that made for a very boring time, and I didn't like it. The pacing of the book was off. Parts of it just seemed to drag on forever, and then other parts went by really quickly, and to the point where like I had to reread parts of it to make sure I read it correctly. All that to say, I was still going to give this 2 stars, because while it's not the book for me, it definitely was the book for some people, until I reached the last 100 pages of this book. So trigger warning for sexual assault and rape. There are 2 scenes in this book. One is early on, and then the one I'm really going to touch on is later on in the book, like the last 100 pages. 2 of these scenes, 2 different male characters do not consent to sex. The first scene was really breezed over and wasn't really officially like addressed. And then the second scene where this happens with a different character at the last 100 pages of the book, there's a lot of victim blaming, victim shaming, and I just can't stand by that. That is not okay to put in a book. This was written or published in 2019. Why was there 100 pages, the last 100 pages of this book, full of victim blaming? So not only do we as a society still have to stand up and say, hey, men can be sexually assaulted too, men can be raped too. Now this book, which is a YA novel, is full of victim shaming and victim blaming. Why? I can't wrap my mind around it. I could not imagine if I was younger and if I identified as a male and I was reading this, how it would make me feel. It was not, it's just not okay, not okay, not okay, not okay, not okay. Just not okay. This book is a 1-star read. There was no reason at all, 1, for that scene to even be in this book, and 2, no reason for the victim shaming or victim blaming other than to create more drama. It was unnecessary. It just felt wrong. It felt gross, and it's not okay. I know I keep saying that. It's wrong. It was wrong. I don't give a book a 1-star unless I genuinely believe that I don't want anyone to read it. So that's how I feel about this. Not only was it not my cup of tea, not only was the story all over the place, the writing all over the place, and we dealt with a very passive character for most of it, and it was boring. We also had to deal with victim blaming and victim shaming. If the roles were reversed and it was a woman or a girl that was dealing with the victim blaming and victim shaming, a lot of people would be speaking out against this book instead of supporting it. I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't get it. And then I got about halfway through The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. I'm gonna finish this up in March. This book is, the main character lives in a puritanical society where women are heavily oppressed. And there are a lot of rules and regulations. Like, men literally can have as many wives as they want in this book. It doesn't quite say what year it's really set, or because it's kind of in a fantasy world. But you kind of get the feel of like either 17th century kind of vibes from it. I mean, you can tell by the cover a little bit of the kind of feel. So the main character's mother was a part of a big scandal where not only was she betrothed to the prophet, who is like the leader, the Christian, not the Christian, the religious leader who has God given powers, and it's a great honor to be betrothed to him. So her mother was betrothed to him, tried to kill him, and no one knows the real reason, had an affair with what they call an outsider or one of the outskirts. The outskirts or the outsiders are people of color that were allowed into this society, but they're not actually a part of society. So the main character is not white, which is one check mark against her because this does deal with racism. But she was also born out of wedlock. That's 2 check marks against her. Her father was actually executed with fire because of the affair, and her mother ran into the dark woods. So the dark woods is where like all the evil exists, including stories about the witches that they had fought hundreds of years before were thought to have lived in the woods, and their coven and their supporters. So if you go into the woods, there's stories and myths that you're not going to come out, that you're going to get killed, that the witches still haunt these woods. Her mother ran away to the woods, came back super pregnant, gave birth to the main character, and then died. So this takes place when she's about 16 or 17. She kind of feels a calling to the woods like her mother did, but because of what her mother did in the past, her entire family was stripped of their honor, their money, their land, their house, and are now living destitute and basically on the brink of ruin. So this book is really good so far. It's very atmospheric. I like the characters so far. I like the mystery. There's a lot more to what's going on than meets the eye. It speaks to me. I grew up in a very religious household, and as a young adult was heavily involved in a church that acted more like a cult than just a regular church. So it definitely speaks to my soul, speaks to some of the stuff that I've gone through. So I'm a little bit emotionally tied to this book. I'll let you know in my March wrap up. Like I said, I'm only about halfway through. So those are the books that I read in January and February. Not a lot, I'm sorry to say. Hopefully, as the months go on, I'll get back into reading about 4 to 6 books a month. That's really what I would like to do, but once you're out of the habit of reading, it's hard to get back in. Of the books that I mentioned, were there any that you have read or any that stood out to you? And let me know in the comments down below. Also, what books did you read in January and February, and what books are you looking forward to reading this year? Please, please wear your masks, wash your hands, practice social distancing, and as always, remember to be nice to yourself and kind to others.